Chapter 12. The Mirror of Eris. Christmas was coming. One morning in mid-December, Howard woke to find himself covered in several feet of snow. The lake froze solid, and the Weasley twins were punished for bewitching several snowballs, so that they followed Quirrell around, bouncing off the back of his turban. The few owls that managed to battle their way through the stormy sky to deliver posts had to be nursed back to health by Hagrid before they could fly off again. No one could wait for the holiday to start. While the Gryffindor common room and the Great Hall had roaring fires, the draughty corridors had become icy and bitter wind rattled the window in the classroom. Worst of all, while Professor Snape classes down in the dungeon where their breath rose and mist before them, and they kept as close as possible to their hot cauldrons. "I do feel so sorry," said Draco Malfoy, one potion classes, "for all those people who have to stay at Hogwarts for Christmas because they're not wanted at home." He was looking over at Harry as he spoke. Graben Goyle chuckled. Harry was measuring out powder spine of lionfish, ignored them. Malfoy had been even more unpleasant than usual since the Quidditch match. Disgusted that Slytherin had mouthed Tree Frog would be replacing Harry as Seeker next, when he realized that nobody found this funny, because they were all so impressed at the way Harry had managed to stay on his bucking broomstick. So Malfoy, jealous and angry, had gone back to taunting Harry about having no proper family. It was true that Harry wasn't go back to private drive for Christmas. Professor McGonagall had come around the week before making a list of students who would be staying for a holiday, and Harry had signed up at once. He didn't feel sorry for himself at all. This would probably be the best Christmas he had ever had. Ron and his brother were staying too, because Mr. and Mrs. Weasley were going to Romania to visit Charlie. When they left the dungeon at the end of Potion, they found a large fir tree blocking the quarter ahead, two enormous feet sticking out of the bottom, and a loud puffing sound told them that Hagrid was behind it. "Hi, Hagrid. Want any help?" Ron asked, sticking his head now through the branches. "Nah, I'm all right, thanks, Ron." "I'm all right, thanks, Ron. Would you mind moving out of the way?" came Malfoy, cold drawl from behind them. "Are you trying to earn some extra money, Weasley? Hoping to be a keen gamekeeper yourself when you leave Hogwarts? I suppose that head of Hagrid must seem like a palace compared to what your family used to." Ron dived at Malfoy just as Snape came up the stair. "Weasley!" Ron let go up the front of Malfoy's robes. "He was provoking Professor Snape," said Hagrid, sticking his huge hairy face out from behind a tree. "Malfoy was insulting his family." "Be that as it may, fighting is against Hogwarts rule, Hagrid," said Snape sulkily. 5 points from Gryffindor, Weasley, and be grateful it isn't more. Move along, all of you." Malfoy, Grabe, and Goyle pushed roughly past the tree, scattering needle everywhere and smirking. "I'll get him," said Ron, grinding his teeth at Malfoy back. "One of these days I'll get him." "I hate them both," said Harry, Malfoy, and Snape. Come on, cheer up. It's nearly Christmas," said Hagrid. "Tell you what, come with me and see the Great Hall. Look great. Look a treat." So Harry, Ron, and Hermione followed Hagrid, his tree, off the Great Hall where Professor McGonagall and Professor Flitwick were busy with the Christmas decoration. "Ah, Hagrid, the last tree put in the far corner, would you?" The hall looked spectacular. Festive and holly and mistletoe hung all around the wall, and no fewer than 12 towering Christmas trees stood around the room, some sparkling with tiny igloos vehicles, some glittering with hundreds of candles. How many days you got left until your holiday? Hagrid asked. Just one, said Hermione. And that reminds me, Harry, Ron, you've got half an hour for lunch. We should be in the library. We should be in the library. Oh yeah, you're right, said Ron, tearing his eyes away from Professor Flitwick, who had golden bubbles blossoming out of his wand and was trailing them over the branch of the new tree. The library, said Hagrid, following them out of the hall. Just before the holiday. Bit keen, aren't you? Oh, we're not working, Harry told him brightly. Ever since you mentioned Nicholas Flamel, we've been trying to find out who he is. You what? Hagrid looked shocked. Listen here, I've told you, drop it. It's nothing to you. What about that still guarding? We just wanted to know who Nicholas Flamel is, that's all, said Hermione. Unless you'd like to tell us and save us the trouble, Harry added. We must have been through hundreds of books already, and we can't find him anywhere. Just give us a hint. I know I've read his name somewhere. I'm saying nothing, said Hagrid flatly. Just have to find out for ourselves then, said Ron, and they left Hagrid looking disgruntled and hurried off to the library. They had indeed been searching books for Flame name ever since Hagrid had let it slip, because how else were they going to find out when Snape was trying to steal? When Snape was trying to steal the trouble was, it was very hard to know where to begin. Not knowing what Flame might have done to get himself into a book, he wasn't a great wizard of 20th century or notable magical name for our time. He was missing too, for the important modern magical discoveries and the study of recent development in wizardry. And then, of course, there was the sheer size of the library, tens of thousands of books, thousands of shelves, hundreds of narrow rows. Hermione took out a list of subjects and titles she had decided to search while Ron strode off down a row of books and started pulling them off the shelf at the random. He already wandered over to the restricted section. He had been wondering for a while if Flamel was somewhere in here. Unfortunately, you need a specially signed note from one of the teachers to look into any of the restricted book, and he knew he would never get one. These were the books containing powerful dark magic never taught at Hogwarts and only read by older students studying advanced defense against dark arts. What are you looking for, boys? Nothing, said Harry. Madame pinched the library and brandished her feather duster at him. You'd better get out, then. Go on, out. Wishing he had been a bit more quicker at thinking some story, Harry left the library. He, Ron, and Hermione had already agreed they'd better not ask Madame Pince where they could find Flamel. They were sure she'd be able to tell them, but they couldn't risk Snape hearing what they were up to. Harry waited outside in the corridor to see if the other two had found anything, but he wasn't very hopeful. They had been looking for a fortnight, for after all. But as they only had odd monuments between lessons, it was not surprising they found nothing. What they really needed for a nice long search without Madame Pince breathing down their neck. 5 minutes later, Ron and Hermione joined him, shaking their heads. They went after the lunch. You'll keep looking a while I'm away, won't you? said Hermione. And send me an owl if you find anything. And you could ask your parents if they know who Flamel is, said Ron. It would be safe to ask them. Very safe. They're both dentists, said Hermione. Once the holiday had started, Ron and Harry were having too good time to think much about Flamel. They had a dormitory for themselves, and common room was far emptier than usual, so they were able to get to get the good armchair by the fire. They sat by the hour eating anything they could spare on toasting fork, bread, crumpets, marshmallow, and plodding away from getting Maverick spelled, which were fun to talk about even if they wouldn't work. Ron also started teaching Harry wizard chess. This is exactly like a muggle chess, except the figure were alive, which made it a lot directing troop in battles. Ronson was a very old and battered. Like everything else he owned, it had once belonged to someone else in his family. In this case, it's his grandfather. However, old chessmen weren't a drawback at all. Ron knew them so well, he never had trouble getting them to do what he wanted. Harry played with chessmen. Samus played with chessmen Sismus Finnegan had lent him, and they didn't trust him at all. He wasn't a very good player yet, and they kept shouting different bits of advice at him, which was confusing. Don't send me there. Can't you see his knight? Send him. We can't afford to lose him. On Christmas Eve, Harry went to bed looking forward to the next day for the food and the fun, but not expecting any present at all. When he woke early next morning, however, the first thing he saw was a small pile of package at the foot of his bed. "Happy Christmas," said Ron sleepily, as Harry scrambled out of bed and pulled out his dressing gown. "You too," said Harry. "Will you look at this? I've got some present." "What did you expect? Turnips," said Ron, taking his own pile, which was a lot bigger than Harry. Harry picked up the top parcel. It was wrapped in thick brown paper, and scrawled across it was to Harry from Hagrid. Inside was a roughly cotton wooden flute. Hagrid had obviously whittled it himself. Harry blew it. It sounded a bit like an owl. A second, very small parcel contained a note. We received your message and enclose your present. Your Christmas present from Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia. Facilitate the note was a 50-pence piece. "That's friendly," said Harry. Ron was fascinated by the 50 pence. "Weird," he said. "What a shape! This is money?" "You can keep it," said Harry, laughing at how pleased Ron was. Hagrid and my aunt and uncle. So who sent these?" "I think I knew who that one was from," said Ron, going a bit pink and pointing to a very lumpy parcel. "My mom. I told her you didn't expect any present, and oh no," he groaned, "she's made you a Weasley jumper." Harry had torn open the parcel to find a thick, hand-knitted sweater and emerald green in a large box of homemade fudge. "Every year she makes us jumper," said Ron, unwrapping his own, "and mine's always maroon." "That's really nice of her," said Harry, trying the fudge, which was very tasty. His next present also contained sweet, a large box of chocolate frog from Hermione. This left only one parcel. Harry picked it up and felt it. It was very light. He unwrapped it. Something fluid and silvery gray went slithering to the floor, where it lay in gleaming fold. Ron gasped. "I've heard of those," he said in a hushed voice, dropping the box of every flavored beans he got from Hermione. "If that one I think it is, they're really rare and really valuable." "What is it?" Harry picked a shining silvery cloth up off the floor. It was strange to touch, like water woven immaterial. "It's an invisibility cloak," said Ron, a look of awe on his face. "I'm sure it is. Try it on." Harry threw the cloak around his shoulder, and Ron gave a yell. "It is! Look down!" Harry looked down at his feet, but they had gone. He dashed the mirror. Sure enough, his reflection looked back at him. Just the head suspended in mid-air, his body completely invisible. He pulled the cloak over his head, and reflection vanished completely. "There's a note," said Ron suddenly. "A note fell out of it." And he pulled off the cloak and seized the letter, written in narrow, loopy writing he had never seen before, were the following words. "Your father left us in my possession before he died. It is time it was returned to you. Use it well. A very Merry Christmas to you." There was no signature. Harry started at the note. Ron was admiring the cloak. "I'll give anything for one of these," he said. "Anything? What's the matter?" "Nothing," said Harry. He felt very strange. He would send the cloak. Had it already once belonged to his father? Before he could say or think anything else, the dormitory doors was flung open, and Fred and George Weasley bounded in. Harry stuffed the cloak quickly out of sight. He didn't feel like sharing it with anyone else yet. Merry Christmas! Hey, look! Harry got a Weasley jumper, too. Fred and George were wearing a blue jumper, one with a large yellow F on it, and the other one is with a G on it. Harry's better than ours, though, said Fred, holding up Harry's jumper. She's obviously making more of an effort if you're not family. Why aren't you wearing yours, Ron? George demanded. Come on, get it on. They're lovely and warm. I hate maroon, Ron moaned half-heartedly as he pulled it over his head. You think you haven't got a letter on yours? George observed. I suppose you think you don't forget your name, but we're not stupid. But we're not stupid. We know we're all called Fred and Forge. What's all this noise? Percy Weasley stuck his head through the door, looking disapproving. He had clearly some halfway through unwrapping his present as he too carried a lumpy jump over his arm, which Fred seized. Perfect! Get it on, Percy. Come on, we're all wearing ours. Even Harry got one. I don't want, said Percy thickly, as the twin as forced the jump over his head, knocking his glasses askew. And you're not sitting with a prefect today either, said George. Christmas is time for family. The frog marched Percy from the room, his arm pinned to his side by his jumper. Harry had never in all his life such a Christmas dinner. 100 fat roast turkey, mounted of roast and boiled potatoes, platter of fat chiplows, tureen of batter peas, silver boat of thick, rich gravy and cranberry sauce, and stack of wizard cracker every few feet along the table. These fantastic cracker were nothing like the feeble muggle ones that Dursley usually bought. With their little cracker with Fred, and it didn't just bang. It went off with a blast like a cannon and engulfed them all in a cloud of blue smoke. While from the inside exploded a rear admiral hat and several live mice. Up on the high table, Dumbledore had swapped his pointed wizard hat for flowered bonnet and was chuckling merrily at the joke Professor Flitwick had just read him. Flaming Christmas pudding followed the turkey. Percy nearly broke his teeth on silver sickle and bright and slice. Harry watched Hagrid getting redder and redder in the face as he called for more wine, finally kissing Professor McGonagall on the cheek, who, to Harry's amazement, giggled and blushed. Her top hat lopsided. When Harry finally left the table, he was laden down with a stack of thing out of cracker, including a pack of non-explodable luminous balloon, a grow-your-own-word kit, and his own new wizard chess set. The white mice had disappeared, and Harry had a nasty feeling they were going to end up as Mrs. North's Christmas dinner. Harry and the Weasleys spent a happy afternoon having a furious snowball fight in the ground, then cold, wet, and gasping for breath. Then returned to the fire in the Gryffindor common room, where Harry broke in his new chest by losing spectacularly to Ron. He suspected he wouldn't have lost so badly. Percy hadn't tried to help him so much. After tea of turkey sandwich, crumpet, trifle, and Christmas cake, everyone felt too full and sleepy to do much before bed except sit and watch Percy chase Fred and George all over the Gryffindor Tower, because they would have stolen his perfect badge. It had been Harry's best Christmas day ever, yet something had been nagging at the back of his mind all day, not until he climbed into the bed, and he was free to think about it. The invisibility cloak, however, had sent it, Ron full of turkey and cake with nothing. Ron full of turkey and cake, and with nothing mysterious to bother him, he fell asleep almost as soon as he had drawn the curtain off his four-poster. Harry leant over the side of his own bed and pulled the cloak out from under it. His father, this had been his father. He let out the material flow over his hand, smooth and then silk, light as air. Use it well, the note had said. He tried. Now he slid out of bed and wrapped the cloak around himself. Looking down at his leg, he saw only moonlight and shadow. It was a very funny feeling. Use it well. Suddenly, Harry felt wide awake. The whole of Hogwarts was open to him in his cloak. Excitement flooded through him as he stood there in the darkened silence. He could go anywhere, and this anywhere, and Filch would never know. Ron grunted in his sleep. Should Harry wake him? Something held him back. His father's cloak. He felt it, and this time, the first time, he wanted to use it alone. He crept out of the dormitory, down the stair, across the common room, and climbed through the portrait hole. Who's there? Squawked the fat lady. Squawked the fat lady. Harry said nothing. He walked quickly down the corridor. Where should he go? He stopped, his heart racing, and thought, and then it came to him, the restricted section in the library. He'd be able to read as long as he liked, as long as it looked to find who Flamel was. He set off, drawing the invisibility cloak tight around him as he walked. There He'll be able to read as long as he liked, as long as it took to find out who Flamel was. He set off, drawing the invisibility cloak tight around him as he walked. The library was pitch black and very eerie. Harry lit the lamp to see its way along the row of books. The lamp looked as if it was floating along in mid-air, and even though Harry could feel his arms supporting it, the sight gave him the creeps, and the restricted section was right at the back of his library. Stepping carefully over, they didn't tell much. Their peeling, faded gold letter spelled word in language Harry couldn't understand. Some had no title at all. One book had a dark stain on it, and that looked horribly like blood. The hair of the back of Harry's neck prickled. Maybe he was imagining it, maybe not, but he thought a faint whispering was coming from the book, as though they knew someone was there who shouldn't be. Here, he had started somewhere, setting the lamp down carefully on the floor. He looked along the bottom shelf for the interesting-looking book. A large black and silver phone caught his eyes. He pulled it out with difficulty because it was very heavy, and balancing it on his knee, let it fall open. A piercing, blood-curdling shriek split the silence. The book was screaming. Harry had snapped it shut, but the shriek went on and on, one high, unbroken, ear-splitting note. He stumped backward and knocked over his lamp, which went out at once, panicking. He heard footsteps coming down from the corridor outside, stuffing the shrieking book back on the shelf. He ran for it. He passed Filch almost in the doorway. Filch's pale, wild eyes looked straight through him, and Harry slipped under Filch's outstretched arm and shrieked off to the corridor. The book's shriek still ringing in his ear. He came to sudden halt in front of a tall suit of armor. He had been so busy getting away from the library he hadn't paid attention to where he was going. Perhaps because it was so dark, he didn't recognize where he was going at all. But there was a suit of armor near the kitchen, he knew, but he must have been 5 floors above there. You can ask me to came direct. You asked me to come directly to you, Professor. If anyone was wandering around the night, and somebody been in the library restricted section. Harry felt the blood rain out of his face. Whether he was, Filch must have known the shortcut because his soft, greasy voice was getting nearer, and his horror. It was Snape who replied, "The restricted section? Well, they can't be far. We'll catch them." Harry stood rooted to the spot as Filch and Snape came around the corner ahead. They couldn't see him, of course, but it was nearer a quarter, and they came so much nearer they would knock right into him. The cloak didn't stop him being solid. He backed away as quietly as he could. A door stood ajar to his left. It was only hope. He squeezed through it, holding his breath, trying not to move it. And his relief, he managed to get inside the room without their noticing anyway. They walked straight past, and Harry leant against the wall, breathing deeply, listening to the footsteps dying away. They had been close, very close, and at a very few seconds before he noticed anything about the room he had hidden in. It looked like this guy's classroom. The dark shape of desk and chair were piled against the wall. There was an upturned paper basket, but propped it against the wall facing him was something that didn't look as if it belonged there. Something that looked as if someone had just put it there to keep out of the way. His magnificent mirror, as high as the ceiling, with an ornate gold frame, standing on two claw feet. There was an unscripted cave carved around the top. Eris dra tro ora we kafru on worsti. His panic fading now that there was no sound of Filch and Snape. He had moved nearer to the mirror, wanting to look at himself, but no reflection at all. He stepped in front of it. He had to clap his hand to his mouth to stop him screaming. He rolled around. His heart was pounding far more fiercely when the book had screamed. For he had seen not only himself in the mirror, but a whole crowd of people standing right behind him. But the room was empty. Breathing very fast, he turned slowly back to the mirror. There he was, reflected in it, white and scared looking, and there was reflected behind himself were at least 10 other. Harry looked over his shoulder, but still no one was there. Or were they all invisible too? Was he in fact in a room of invisible people, and the mirror trick was that it reflected them, invisible or not? He looked in the mirror again. A woman standing right behind. A, a woman standing right behind his reflection was smiling at him and waving. He reached he reached He reached out a hand and felt the air behind him. If she was really there, he felt if she was really there, he'd touch her. Their reflections were so close together, but he felt only air, as she and the other existed only in the mirror. She was a very pretty woman. She had dark red hair and her eyes were just like mine, Harry thought, edging a little closer to the glass. Bright green, exactly the same shape. But then he noticed that she was crying, smiling, but crying at the same time. The tall, thin, black-haired man standing next to her put his arm around her. He wore glasses and his eyes were very untidy. It stuck up at the back, just like Harry did. Harry was so close to the mirror now that his nose was nearly touching that of his reflection. "Mum," he whispered. "Dad?" Then just look at him, smiling, and slowly Harry looked into the face of other people in the mirror, and saw other pair of green eyes like his, other nose like his, even a little old man looked as though he had Harry nobly knees. Harry was looking at his family for the first time in his life. The porter smiled and waved at Harry, and he stared hungrily back at them, his hand pressed flat against the glass as though he was hoping to fall right through it and reach them. He had a powerful kind of ache inside him, half joy, half terrible sadness. How long he stood there he didn't know. The reflection did not fade, and he looked and looked until a distant noise brought him back into his sense. He couldn't stay here. He had to find his way back to his bed. He tore his eyes away from his mother and whispered, "I'll come back," and hurried off from the room. "You could have woken me up," said Ron crossly. "You can come tonight. I'm going back. I want to show you the mirror. I'd like to see your mum and dad," Ron said eagerly. "And I want to see all your family, all the Weasley. You'll be able to show me your other brothers and everyone." "You can see them any old time," said Ron. "It's around this just come around my house this summer. Anyway, maybe it's only show dead people." "Shame about not finding Flamel, though. I have some bacon or something. Why aren't you eating anything?" Harry couldn't eat. He had seen his parents and would be seeing them again tonight. He had almost forgotten about Flamel. It didn't seem very important anymore. Who cared? He had almost. Who cared what the three-headed dog was guarding? Who didn't matter if Snape stole it, really? "Are you all right?" said Ron. "You look odd." What Harry feared most was that he might not be able to find the mirror room again. With Ron covered in a cloak too, they had to walk much more slowly the next night. They tried retracing Harry en route from the library, wandering around the dark passage for nearly an hour. "I'm freezing," said Ron. "Let's forget it and go back." "No," Harry hissed. "I know it's here somewhere." They passed the ghost of a tall witch gliding in the opposite direction, but saw no one else. Just as Ron started moaning that his feet were dead with cold, Harry spotted the suit of armor. "It's here, just here, yes." They pushed the door open. Harry dropped the cloak from around his shoulder and ran to the mirror. There they are, smothered his father, beamed at the sight of him. "See?" Harry whispered. "I can't see anything." Look at them. They're all loads of them. I can only see you." "Look at them properly. Go on, stand where I am." Harry stepped aside, but with Ron in front of the mirror, he couldn't see his family anymore. Just Ron in his paisley pajamas. Ron threw a staring transfixed his image. "Look at me," he said. "Can you see all your family standing around you?" "No, I'm alone, but I'm different. I look older, and I'm head boy." "What?" "I am. I'm wearing the badge like Bill used to, and I'm holding the house cup and Quidditch cup. I'm Quidditch captain too." Ron tore his eyes away from splendid and sight to look excitedly at Harry. "Do you think this mirror shows the future?" "How can it? All my family are dead. Let me have another look." "You had to do yourself all last night. Give it to me a bit more time. You're only holding the Quidditch cup. That's interesting about that. What's interesting about that? I want to see my parents." "Don't push me." A sudden noise outside in the corner put an end to the discussion. They hadn't realized how loudly they had been talking. "Quick!" Ron threw the cloak back over them as the luminous eyes still Mrs. Norris came around the door. "This isn't safe. She might have gone flinch, but I bet she heard us. Come on." And Ron pulled Harry out of the room. Snow still hadn't melted next morning. "Want to play chess, Harry?" said Ron. "No. Why don't we go down and visit Hagrid?" "No, you do. You go." "I know what you're thinking about, Harry. That mirror. Don't go back tonight." "Why not?" "I don't know. I've just got a bad feeling about it. And anyway, you've not too many close shaven already. Filch, Snape, and Mrs. Norris are wandering around. So what if they can't see? So what if they can't see you? What if they walk into you? What if they're knocking some? What if you knock something over?" "You sound like Hermione." "I'm serious, Harry. Don't go." But Harry only had one thought in his head, which was to get back in front of the mirror, and Ron was going to stop him. The third night, he found his way more quickly than before. He was walking so fast he knew he was making more noise than was wise, but he didn't meet anyone. and there was his mother and father smiling at him again. And one of his grandfather nodding happily, Harry sank down to the floor and in front of the mirror. There's nothing to stop him here all night with his family, nothing at all. Except, so back again, Harry? Harry felt as though his inside had turned into ice. He looked behind himself, sitting on one of the desks by the wall was none other than Albus Dumbledore. Harry must have walked straight past him, so desperate to get to the mirror. He hadn't noticed him. I didn't see you, sir. Strange how short sight being invisible can make you, said Dumbledore. Said, and Harry was relieved to see what he was smiling. So, said Dumbledore, slipping off the desk to sit on the floor with Harry, you look 100 before you. I've discovered the light of Mirror of Eris. I didn't know it was called that, sir, but I expect you realize by now that it does. It showed me, my family, and it showed your friend around himself as head boy. How did you know? I didn't need a collar to become invisible, said Dumbledore gently. Now, can you come think of what a Mirror of Eris shows us all? Harry shook his head. Let me explain. The happiest man on earth will be able to use the Mirror of Eris like a normal mirror. That is, he would look into it and see himself exactly as he is. Does that help? Harry thought. Then he saw it shows what we want, whatever we want. Yes and no, said Dumbledore quietly. It shows nothing more or less than the deepest, most desperately desire of our heart. You, who have never known your family, see them standing around you. Ronald Weasley, who has always been overshadowed by his brother, see himself standing alone, the best of all of them. This mirror will give us neither knowledge or truth. Men have wasted away from it. Entranced by that, they have seen or been driven mad, not knowing if what it shows is real or even possible. The mirror will be moved to a new home tomorrow, Harry, and I ask you not to go looking for it again. If you ever do run across it, you'll be repaired. It does not do the dwell on dreams and forget to live. Remember that. Now, why don't you put that admirable cloak back on and get off to bed? Harry stood up. Sir Professor Dumbledore, can I ask you something? Obviously, you've done just so. Dumbledore smiled. You may ask me one more thing, however, what did you see when you look in the mirror? I see myself holding a pair of thick woolen socks. Harry stared. One can never have enough socks, said Dumbledore. Another Christmas was come and gone and didn't get a single pair. People will insist on giving me books. It was only when he was back in his bed. Then it struck Harry that Dumbledore might not have been quite truthful, but then he thought, as he showed Scrapper off his pillow, it had been quite a personal question.